Everyone knows Mark Twain was a great writer. He'd have to be, given we still read and discuss his books over 110 years after his death. But did you know that being a great writer was just the tip of the iceberg when it came to what made him an interesting man? Well, today we're going to take a look at how Mark Twain was somehow even more interesting than you thought. But before we get started, be sure to subscribe to the Weird History channel and let us know in the comments below what other famous historical writers you would like to hear about. Okay, now as Twain would say, never let schooling interfere with your education. Most modern folks are introduced to Mark Twain's writing at school, so they associate him exclusively with highbrow literature. However, Twain also occasionally penned some good old-fashioned smut, though in all fairness, smut by his standards was a lot more of a witty exercise in satire than a lurid plunge into the unsavory. Twain's work entitled 1601, after the year of its setting, was the most famous piece of literary pornography around. The fact that it was able to achieve that level of popularity might explain why Twain published it anonymously in 1880. Framed as passages taken from the journals of one of Queen Elizabeth I's ladies-in-waiting, 1601 records the Queen's racy conversations with some of the leading authors of her day. The subjects include sex, flatulence, and a host of other bawdy hilarities. Oh, Mark, you naughty man. In 1857, when Mark Twain was in his early 20s, he got a job as an apprentice steamboat pilot. He worked on a vessel called the Pennsylvania, situated on the Mississippi River, and eventually got his 19-year-old brother, Henry, a job aboard the same ship. Not long afterward, Henry died from a tragic accident when a boiler explosion rocked the ship. Twain's devastation was made all the more acute by the fact that he'd had a premonition of the tragedy. According to Twain, the day before the Pennsylvania had embarked upon its fateful voyage, he had a dream in which he saw his younger brother lying in a metal casket, dressed in one of his older brother's suits. In the dream, Henry's body had a large bouquet of white roses on his chest, with a single red rose at the center. Amazingly, and quite tragically, it all came to pass exactly as Twain claims he foresaw. On the day of Henry's viewing, Twain found his brother lying in the open coffin, wearing one of his own suits, exactly as in the dream. According to the tale, it was at that moment that an elderly lady walked up to the coffin with a bouquet of white roses, with one red rose in the center, and placed it on Henry's chest. Mark Twain and Halley's Comet had a special relationship, one that ties in no small way into the author's reputation as a psychic. Though Twain was born 2 weeks after the comet's appearance in 1835, he also predicted he would die the day after its return in 1910, and he did. As he stated in 1909, "I came in with Halley's Comet in 1835. It is coming again next year, and I expect to go out with it." He added, "It will be the greatest disappointment of my life if I don't go out with Halley's Comet. The Almighty has said no doubt. Now here are these two unaccountable freaks. They came in together, they must go out together." Whether this prediction, made just a year before his death, was the result of psychic foreknowledge or just a lucky guess, based on the current state of his health, is open to debate. But even if it was the latter, it was a pretty good guess. In addition to his prophetic dream about his brother's death and his famous prediction about his own death coinciding with the appearance of Halley's Comet, Mark Twain was said to have experienced other psychic incidents. According to his mother, Mark predicted his 9-year-old sister's death when he was just 4. And there were other occasions he made wild predictions that seemingly came true. This includes one that was recounted in an 1891 article on mental telegraphy in Harper's. In the article, Twain recalled a time when a friend of his visited Washington, D.C. Although he didn't coordinate with the said individual beforehand, he was browsing in a shop when suddenly the man came back into his mind, and he knew with startling specificity that if he left the shop, turned left, and walked 10 feet, his friend would be standing there. According to Twain, he was right, and the friend was found exactly where he thought he would be. Most people don't associate Mark Twain with the worlds of science, technology, or invention. But in fact, he held patents on 3 of his own inventions, including a history trivia game, an article of clothing he called garment fasteners, which were pretty much the same thing we know as suspenders, and a self-pasting scrapbook, which was probably a book with some kind of built-in adhesive. Twain was also a friend of Nikola Tesla. In fact, Twain once even volunteered to demonstrate Tesla's theories about using the human body as a conductor of electricity, obviously in a way that didn't include death by electrocution. Partially as a result of his digestive issues, Twain also agreed to volunteer as a guinea pig for Tesla's oscillator, which has been described as a kind of vibrating platform. Legend had it that Tesla knew Twain, who he was acquainted with through a mutual membership in the same gentleman's club, had extensive digestive problems. So he invited the author to his workspace, where he had Twain stand on a platform. Tesla then turned on the oscillator and started the vibrating process. According to the story, after just a minute and a half of such treatment, Twain leapt off the platform and ran to the bathroom as quickly as his legs would carry him. Whether the oscillator actually cured his digestive problems or just made him want to puke is anybody's guess. Though Twain briefly continued on his career as a riverboat captain, even after his brother Henry's death, his time on the job ended with the onset of the Civil War in 1861, when riverboat traffic ground to a halt. Now unemployed, Twain joined a Confederate militia known as the Marion Rangers. According to a fellow recruit, he showed up riding a mule and carrying a squirrel rifle and an umbrella, but then he quit only after 2 weeks. Why did he quit? Well, no one is exactly sure, but legend has it that the shortness of Twain's stint in the Rangers was partially the result of the authors being intimidated by none other than Ulysses S. Grant himself. However, many have also pointed out that Twain was a very liberal man who opposed slavery. You're probably wondering, why would any anti-slave liberal join a Confederate militia in the first place? According to Twain later in his life, his temporary participation in the cause was on account of his political ignorance. Infant and child mortality was very common in Twain's era, and while the author had a total of 7 brothers and sisters, only half of the children survived. These survivors included his aforementioned brother Henry, who made it out of infancy but was killed in a riverboat accident at the age of 19. His brother Orion lived to be 72, and his sister Pamela, who lived to be 76. His other brother, Pleasant, lived only 1 year, and his older sister, Margaret, died at 9 from something called bilious fever. We'll spare you the details of what that entailed, but long story short, it was usually caused by malaria. According to his autobiography, Twain's boyhood was marked by a series of near-catastrophic accidents involving water. Young Twain apparently loved being in and around water, but didn't actually know how to swim, which is not the safest combination of traits. In fact, Twain claimed to have almost drowned a total of at least 9 times, including once in Bear Creek and 6 times in the Mississippi. He recalls being fished out of the water on at least one of those occasions by a slave woman, and he was rescued by a young apprentice on another. Despite the fact that history is filled with prominent artists and intellectuals who have little to no formal education, people like poet Walt Whitman, painter Frida Kahlo, and architect Frank Lloyd Wright, many continued to be surprised by the fact that Twain left school after the 5th grade. Twain, who, as we know, would go on to become one of the most accomplished figures in American literature, read voraciously all through his youth. And at 18, he moved to New York and then Philadelphia to pursue a career as a newspaperman. He was highly successful in his chosen profession, and he was never hindered by his lack of formal education. Samuel Langhorne Clemens actually wrote under many pen names before settling on Mark Twain. These included Thomas Jefferson Snodgrass, Sergeant Fathom, and we're totally serious here, W. Epaminondas Adrastus Blab. But his final moniker, Mark Twain, wasn't just some random nom de plume. It actually had a very special and very nautical meaning. In fact, Mark Twain was an expression used by Mississippi boatmen that referred to the second mark on the line that measured depth signified 2 fathoms, or 12 feet, which was the safe depth for a steamboat to travel through. That's right, Clemens' pen name was really more of a pun name. Given Twain's many brushes with death by drowning, it is both ironic and tragic that his youngest daughter, Jean, died by drowning in her bathtub at the age of 25. It wasn't just some random accident either. Jean was killed after suffering a seizure brought on by epilepsy. As you'd expect, her untimely demise weighed heavily on her father. A New York Times piece announcing his death on April 21, 1910, even mused that her tragic death had done much to hurry his end. So what do you think? What's your favorite Twain book? Let us know in the comments below. And while you're at it, check out some of these other videos from our weird history.